Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. Thank you for joining us today as we present today's Tech Talk on deployment types in Dynamics 365 project operations. My name is Satish Panwar, and I'll be moderating this session. We are broadcasting this session through Town Hall. This session is being recorded on behalf of Microsoft Corporation. When you join this event, your name and email address may be viewable by session organizers. By joining, you are agreeing to this experience. The recording will be made available in the TechTalk Dynamics community page within 5 to 7 business days. If you have questions for presenters or need support, please use the Q&A located on the right side of your screen. If you wish your name not to be visible to organizers or session participants, please post your questions anonymously. Our presenters will be responding to your questions throughout the session and in a live segment at the end of the presentation. Also, please do provide your valuable feedback using the survey link posted in the Q&A panel. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. To present today's session, I'm joined by my colleague, Martin Walker. With that, let's dive in. As part of today's Tech Talk, we plan to cover various deployment types that are available for Dynamics 365 project operations, agent availability and compatibility with different deployment types. We will also share some of the platform current limits that should be considered when selecting a deployment type, followed by considerations for extensions. So let's start with a very basic question. What deployment types are available for Dynamics 365 project operations? Deployment type selection is one of the important criteria for a successful implementation of project operations. Let's review 3 different deployment types that are available within the Dynamics 365 project operations. Know that project operations can span across Dataverse and finance and operations platform depending upon the deployment. First, we have the project operations core deployment, also known as light deployment or CE only deployment or Dataverse only deployment for project operations. This deployment is designed for organizations that primarily need project management and resource management without the complexity of financial management. It's quick to set up and provide essential tools for managing projects and resources effectively. If the customer is looking only for the front-end capabilities, starting from sales to pro forma invoice, and not looking for finance capabilities, they can use project operations core deployment and integrate it with their third-party ERP based on their requirements. Second, we have the project operations integrated with ERP deployment type, also known as resource or non-stock scenarios or integrated deployment. If customer is resource-based service organizations looking to implement resource scheduling, tracking time and expense, this deployment type is suitable. This deployment type leverage capabilities from Dataverse and finance and operations apps. Front-end capabilities from sales to pro forma invoice is available in Dataverse, and via dual write, this information flows to finance and operations apps. Invoicing, revenue recognition, and project accounting capabilities is built upon finance and operations platform. Stock products are now supported in the project operations integrated with ERP deployment. One of the major decisions in project operations integrated with ERP deployment type is where do you want to track expenses? If you want to track expenses in a light way in Dataverse, you can do that on the Dataverse side. But if you want full expense management capabilities with workflows, then use expense management module within finance and operations app. Full expense management capability also allow you to use expense agent. Third and the last deployment type is the project operations for manufacturing, also known as stock or production order-based scenarios or PMA only, or project management and accounting module in Dynamics 365. These are some of the legacy names for the same deployment. All the capabilities from project sales to project accounting are built within the Finance and Operations app. We recommend this deployment type for customers that relies heavily on project production orders. If you're currently using a project operations for manufacturing order deployment type and do not require project production orders, you can now move to the modern architecture of project operations. For more details, refer our Learn documentation. Please know that Microsoft is committed to building front-end capabilities of the project management capabilities on the Dataverse and invoice and project invoicing related capabilities on the finance side. And that's why project operations integrated with ERP is our default recommendation if customer require project management and finance capabilities. Know that the breadth of all the capabilities of Dataverse and Finance and Operations app still goes under the overall Dynamics 365 project operations umbrella. For project operations, we have 3 agents that are currently available, and they are time, approvals, and expense agent, also known as TEA agents. It is available to understand agent capabilities based on deployment type. The time agent helps create automated time entries based on user assignments, booking, or previous week time entries. Approval agent helps streamline the review process for time, material, and expense that are submitted in Dataverse. The expense agent helps extract data from receipts and creation of automated expense lines. It also includes receipt matching capabilities for credit card transactions that can be imported through different business processes. Time and approvals agents are applicable for 2 deployment types, project operations core and project operations integrated with ERP. Approval agent is also applicable to expense entries that are submitted in Dataverse directly. Expense agent is applicable to project operations integrated with ERP deployment type when customer is using expense management module, and also for project operations for manufacturing deployment type. Any customer that is using expense management capabilities in Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations app can use expense agent. There is no dependency on projects module to enable the expense agent. We also recommend that you start using these agents during the early phase of the project and not treat them as afterthought. For more details on agentic capabilities in Dynamics 365 project operations, refer to our tech talk on this specific topic. Here is a quick reference to architecture diagram for Dynamics 365 project operations with 3 deployment types. Project operations core is using only the Dataverse model-driven app. Project operations for manufacturing is the project management and accounting module within Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, and suitable for manufacturing companies that relies on project purchase orders. Project operations integrated with ERP leverages both Dataverse for project sales, planning, and execution, and Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations for GL, AR, AP, and project accounting. Let's talk about high-level architecture. Components making a project operations solution will depend upon the deployment type you select. For integrated with ERP deployment type, there are 3 components: Planner Premium on the left, Dataverse and its application in the middle, and PMA module in Finance and Operations app on the right. Planner Premium is used as an engine for scheduling and task management. However, you won't see Planner Premium as an independent application because it's wrapped in the Dataverse app in the middle. Specifically, in project form, you will see Tasks tab, where you can perform various actions to manage project-related resources. That is the embedded experience of Planner Premium. Planner Premium engine keeps syncing data with Dataverse asynchronously in the backend. Usually, a particular persona will either be working with one app or the other. People who are using project execution capabilities will be using Dataverse app, and project accountants will be using PMA module in finance and operations. Of course, some user may access both. For example, project managers will be using the small portion of F&O app to enter expenses, while most of the project execution, like task management and time entry, will be done on the Dataverse app. Selecting the deployment type. This is one of the most important decisions you make in early stage of the project. You need to carefully consider which deployment type you will need to meet customer goals and requirements, because changing deployment type in the middle of the implementation can cause significant rework. Let's consider a use case. Customer is planning to deploy project operations for manufacturing, although there are no major functional gaps with the project operations integrated with ERP deployment type. In such scenario, you need to reconsider your decision. Is it absolutely necessary? If not, use project operations integrated with ERP deployment type. Sometimes we hear reasons like we are already using finance, or partner is more focused on finance and operations app and not on the Dataverse. Another reason we have heard is we don't want to introduce Dataverse because it just increases the overall complexity of the solution. It's difficult to maintain. While this seems to be right at a first glance, going for project operations for manufacturing or legacy PMA is basically against our go forward roadmap. As mentioned earlier, most of our investments related to front-end capabilities is on the Dataverse side, which attributes to project operations core and project operations integrated with ERP. Those capabilities will not be added to project operations for manufacturing deployment type. If you decide to go with project operations for manufacturing deployment type to fulfill customer requirements, customer may miss out on the new front-end capabilities that already exist on the Dataverse side or may be released in future. If there are smaller gaps, they can be closed with extensions rather than selecting a wrong deployment type. Use project operations for manufacturing only if you require project production orders. Know that deployment type can be selected by legal entity. If customer is already using projects in Dynamics 365, determine if their deployment can be changed or what needs to be done to change their deployment type. If customer is using Dynamics 365 Finance but not using projects, then they are not constrained by the deployment type. They should evaluate project operations integrated with ERP and use that deployment type if possible. What we have also seen multiple times is multiple partners collaborate for Dynamics 365 integrated deployment or combine the core deployment or the project operations for manufacturing. In those cases, ensure that the overall solution is being validated and meets customer requirements. Let's review another use case. Customer is developing a custom integration between project operations core and project operations for manufacturing instead of project operations integrated with ERP. This is another reinventing the wheel type of scenario. While customer or partner prefer to build custom integration in beginning of the project, either maybe depending upon the scope or depending upon the simplicity, but by the end or midway of the project, there are already escalations starting because customer and partners start to feel the pain, cost overaged, but then it's too late. So if possible, avoid it from the beginning. If you choose project operations integrated with ERP mode, you will get out of the box dual write mappings to synchronize information between Dataverse and Finance and Operations app. You'll also get pre and post processing logic and batches, all kind of functionalities without any customization. But once you choose custom integration approach, you need to develop and maintain those add-ons and customizations throughout the solution's lifecycle. This is huge technical debt and often a source of escalation. Also, you will have challenges adopting updates and new features. You might need to modify your customization, or in the worst case scenario, your customization conflicts with new functionality and may just stop working. Another use case scenario is customer is planning to deploy Dynamics 365 Field Service integrated with Dynamics 365 Finance. Couple of consideration that we should take. One is there is now new integration between Field Service and finance and operations that relies upon integrated with ERP deployment type of Dynamics 365 project operations. Other considerations are, do you already have legacy integration between field service and Dynamics 365 finance? If so, it needs to be upgraded so that the new standard field service integration can be used, which is through project operations integrated with ERP framework. Another consideration is, have you already deployed project operations for manufacturing, right? And adding just the field service. So take all these into consideration. If this scenario or if this use case is applicable to you, we'll be probably publishing more detailed guidelines around this specific topic. Some additional guidelines when selecting deployment type. It is important to decide early what type of deployment will be used per legal entity, and also enable the legal entity with project operations integrated with ERP deployment type from early stage of the configurations. Ensure customer is aware what deployment type has been selected and why, especially when the deployment type is project operations for manufacturing. Be mindful of differences in functionality based on the deployment type. We've listed some of the reasons that we have heard from customers and partners on why would they prefer one deployment type over the other. For example, sub-project is one of the common ones. It only applies to project operations for manufacturing, but the same functionality can be achieved in core and integrated with ERP deployment type via contract and contract lines and task-based billings. Between the deployment types, budgeting is modeled differently. There is concept of timesheets versus time entries. Agent functionalities that we already review for time, expense, and approvals, they can vary based on the deployment type that you have selected. And now we have also provided the functionality to enable the use of integrated with ERP deployment type for existing manufacturing deployment. Reach out to your FastTrack team counterpart or me directly if any of your customers are interested in changing their deployment type from project operations for manufacturing to integrated with ERP deployment type. Let's review some additional guidelines. If a customer is using professional service automation or PSA functionality exclusively and does not require ERP or finance systems, project operations core is the recommended deployment type. If customer is using PSA functionality and are using D365 finance or need a financial system, project operations integrated with ERP deployment type is recommended. For partners with ISV solutions, it is recommended to move the ISV solution to the modern architecture or align with integrated with the ERP deployment type. Subsequently, also help customers migrate from manufacturing deployment type to integrated with ERP deployment type. Before designing a solution, or in this case, selecting a deployment type, it's always important to understand the current limits and determine how they can impact the project and what can be done about these limits if they are impacting your decision. If your project is impacted by these limits, please reach out to FastTrack team for guidance. Noticing limits in the middle of the project can cause tremendous amount of rework. Better understanding of limits leads us to a better solution and lower risk. As mentioned before, Planner Premium is used for managing work breakdown structures in Dynamics 365 Project Operations Core deployment and integrated with ERP deployment type. To compare the customer requirements versus the current limits on the Planner Premium, we recommend to examine and identify most large and complex projects from very early stages. Once you know the customer requirements, they can be compared with the current limits. It is not recommended to design, configure, and test based on oversimplified scenarios that can lead to late awareness of limits, hence undermining confidence, resulting in major rework, delays, and cost overruns. To avoid this, please review the limit document carefully and identify the high-risk scenarios or transaction patterns earlier in the project. We have published these limits on the Learn page for project operations. Some key considerations are maximum total task for a project. The current limit is 3,000. And these limits have come a long way. So it's not that these limits are platform, very hard limits, but that's what we have tested successfully, and the platform still behaves good from a performance perspective. Maximum total duration for a project is now 15 years. You can also add custom fields for a task, which is 10. Maximum duration of leaf task is 1250 days. Maximum resource assigned to a task is 50 resources. If your project is impacted and these limits do not meet your customer requirements, then please reach out to us. We continue to monitor customer requirements and enhance these limits as seems fit. We would like you to be aware of existing dual write limits and what Microsoft team has done to overcome those limitations. Dual write limits are not specific for project operations, but still applicable. So please review the links provided to understand the limitations of dual write. We recommend to identify long-running transactions, large volume transactions, and bulk create or update scenario at the early stage and evaluate them against dual write limitation. The total number of transactions that you can perform per day per tenant is governed by service protection API limits. Also, dual write live synchronization limit the number of records per single transaction to 1,000 records. Transaction time limit is 2 minutes. This limit is coming from plugin mechanism in data hours. Dual write is leveraging plugin mechanism, so it cannot handle transaction running more than 2 minutes. When you evaluate transactions, please consider not only regular operations, but also seasonal or ad hoc operations. For example, you may find bulk insert or update scenario in the year-end operations or organizational change. Recommendation for the scenarios like invoices with large number of lines are, if they exceed more than 1,000 lines, they can be split, or you can now use the feature dual write async. Microsoft team is already working on enabling this as default behavior for transaction types with large volumes like invoices. If you have transactions where the volume cannot be handled by standard dual write live synchronization, please try out the dual write async feature. If you encounter issues, please reach out to your Microsoft counterparts or open a support ticket. Let's review some of the considerations during the extension of project operations functionality. The core of the project operations integrated with ERP deployment type is the data synchronization between data hours and finance and operations apps. In short, when a time, expense, fee transaction is posted in data hours, the actuals flow to finance and operations synchronously via dual write. They end up in a staging area that need to be processed to be reflected in the project subledger and general ledger. This process consists of 2 steps, a routine that transfer the records from the staging area to an integration journal, and a routine that posts this integration journal. Invoice lines are generated after the integration journal has been posted via the batch import from staging table. Some customers would like though these project subledger and general ledger transaction to be immediately available in finance and operations, and have asked their implementation partner to customize the procedures. If you are in the same position, please take the time to understand very well what the standard classes are doing. A customization gone wrong can mean actuals being lost on the way and unbalanced transactions being created between the subledger and the ledger or between the 2 platforms. Even in the case of relying on standard procedures, evaluate the frequency of import from staging and post-integration journal. Frequency of post-integration journal should be less than frequency of import from staging. The system groups journal lines into separate journals based on the value selected in the period unit. Possible values are day, month, year, or all. Otherwise, you'll end up with a lot of journals in the system, making the maintenance more difficult. Think about 10-minute frequency for import from staging and 30 minutes for post-integration journal. We recommend users to wait for 2 hours to see the invoices in finance and operations upon confirmation, and if not available, then act on why this is still the case. Each import from staging and post-integration journal job logs a lot of information. Evaluate how much of the batch history makes sense to keep in the system. Batch cleanup routines configuration needs to be made to meet the history requirements. New parameter for limiting the number of lines per integration journal have been introduced. So use that feature. We have recently released the actuals validation feature. Please turn on these features to validate the actuals in finance and operations before they are processed by batch routines. We release a lot of features, so it's important to review the release notes on a regular basis to determine what features have been released and how they can be leveraged. When it comes to adding more data to flow through dual write, please proceed with caution. Sometimes customers want to capture and see more information on project operations or Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations app related to expenses, vendor invoices, time entries, actuals, invoices, and so on. If you want to add more data to dual write flow, please evaluate the need first. If you really need additional transactional data, please consider to extend standard entities by adding more fields with existing data sources only, so that you can leverage out-of-the-box mapping. It is not recommended to disable standard entity mapping and create a new set of entities and go with complete custom dual write mappings. This would increase the complexity and technical debt, and also those custom mappings may break out-of-the-box capabilities when the system gets updated. When the requirement is all about viewing or reading the data, avoid considering dual write as a first option. There are better ways for read-only scenarios like Canvas app or Power BI based on the data exported with Synapse Link. Additional filter criteria on transactional entities could result in a subset of transaction to be sent across the platform. This can cause issues as many transactions may be skipped from processing through the entire process. Since most of approval in project operations is automated for expense and vendor invoices, not all fields need to be synchronized between Dataverse and finance and operations. We have recently released the Enable Project Operations Integration Workspace feature. Use the integration workspace to understand data flow between the platform and if there are any discrepancies. Also, do not customize or manipulate actuals. In this scenario, customer is using their own financial systems and need to create actuals in project operations or update out-of-the-box fields in actuals entity. We only recommend to add net new tracking fields and only update data in those fields. If you need to reverse, use the entry journals. Creating actuals directly is not supported, and users should not be manipulating out-of-the-box fields in actuals table. As project operations integrated with ERP deployment type spans two platforms, Dataverse and Finance and Operations app, think holistically about your business processes. From extension perspective, align where you want to extend the system, which is Dataverse for project planning and execution, and Finance and Operations apps for project accounting. If you need to correct any transaction, always correct at source. For example, if you want to correct your actuals, please use correction journal to reverse the old one and create a new actual. Do not try to modify actuals or integrated journals directly because it may cause data discrepancy between Dataverse and Finance and Operations. Because actuals are synced to Finance and Operations by dual write and posted by periodic process in Finance and Operations, if you modify actuals or integrated journals after posting, that change won't get reflected to ledgers, so it can cause data discrepancy. And please test processes end-to-end across platforms. Adding a validation just on the Dataverse does not guarantee that you will be able to process the transaction downstream in F&O. For example, if you create transaction type cost for transaction classes fee in Dataverse, this won't be an error on Dataverse side, but will end up with an error when posting in Finance and Operations. Important thing here is this is not the individual scenario because other similar issues could occur and we can't list all of them here. That is why we need to test processes end to end with possible combinations of transactions. We have been adding more guardrails in place so that these issues can be avoided. Next one is what I already mentioned. Do not edit actuals directly. Actually, by default, we can't do that because out of the box plugin prevented. But anyway, do not try that as it can cause data discrepancy that is extremely difficult to fix. We do not recommend using entry journals with intercompany resources. Entry journals or correction journal is a table to correct actuals without creating a source document like timesheets or expenses. For intercompany transaction, you need to use time entries or expenses to correct, otherwise it will create a discrepancy as well. That's what we wanted to cover for today. Let me also quickly take a look at questions to see if there are any unanswered questions. So the first one is, where can I find recording of this? It will be published on the Dynamics community page, and we can post the link where it will be posted. Another question is, when will the Connect field service to finance and operations be available, the Dataverse solution to deploy, and the supporting documentation in Learn? This is already a work in progress, and we'll be publishing more details soon. Another question is, how extensible is the task or planner premium framework on the Dataverse side? Imagine that we want to add a custom field to task view and let that sync back to FNO. What are the options to do that? Is there any detailed guidance, as the tasks section seems to be quite a black box since it lives out of Dataverse? Custom fields can be added, and up to 10 custom fields can be displayed on the grid as well. So there have been recent improvements. So try out those features. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out, or after reviewing the documentation, you can open a support ticket as well, and our team will help guide through that process. That concludes our presentation for today. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you in the next Tech Talk.